All right. How in the world did we miss a close to 20 million% gain? Before you're done, you will have an opportunity to be able to see how that happened, how it unfolded, and if there's any opportunity around here. But before I get started, I want to make sure that you understand that this is not financial advice. This is simply educational entertainment purposes only. And you've read the disclaimer, so it is your responsibility to make sure you do consult the right professionals to make sure that you, if you're going to invest on anything. So that being said, let's get right to it. Shiba Inu, a coin that I had completely slipped my radar, never really looked at it. And when I look at the charts now, I'm like, I see this, right? So somebody bought way up here and has been riding this all the way down towards this. This is a terrible, terrible experience. And if you've been trading for a while, you probably started out and had some of these losses, which are 80, almost 90% of your loss on some of these. So how can we learn from this? How did somebody get 20 million or close to 20 million%? Well, when I first heard about Shiba Inu, and this was recently, I was like, I didn't do a whole lot of fundamentals. I'm a technical analyst, and that's what I do, and that's what we train individuals to do. So from here, we said, well, let's take a look. So I type in USDT, USD initially, tried FTX, tried Binance. You got an initial pump and then a drop again. That seems like what's the pattern. So let's take a look at some of the other ones. Boy, okay, that seems a little bit like we have a little bit more data. So this is a good little piece of information here to make sure that you get it. By the time you're done with this video, you'll have a better sense of how to even begin to look at some of these charts. If you see something like that, as you saw, what we were watching is when it hits an exchange, it starts to drop. And that's what you see. You see this part of the chart, but you don't see this part of the chart. So it got me thinking, like, wait a minute, what's the biggest gain? Because I keep hearing, somebody put out some sort of news that somebody hit 20 million% or close to 20 million%. And I'm like, what in the world? Where did that happen? So from this low to that high, it's it's a really good gain, right? It's 1,800%. So 18 extra money. So if you put 1,000 in, that would have been 18,000, which is really good gain, right? But you have to have caught it down here and exited right at the top. So how can we catch some of those? I'll share with you a little tip there before we're done as to how you might catch some of these tops in some of these scenarios. It doesn't always work. Like anything else, it won't always work. The market will move in the way that it moves, and everything that you try out, that's why their stop losses are important. So that being said, let's say that this was at Huboy, which is another exchange. Now, depending on where you're at, some of these exchanges are available, some of them are not. Then I started going backwards. I said, well, let's go to OKX. OKX, again, give me a little bit more, but still not quite enough. It'd be nice if we could find one that would have an entire, a little more history. So let's go back to USDT. And why am I doing USDT? If you know anything about the stable coins, USDT is considered a stable coin, and we have a video on that, and so you can take a look at that. And of course, if you like these videos and you want to get more, click that like button or subscribe. Okay, that didn't help us very much, did it? So let's go to OKX. Okay, OKX, let's see what we got. We already looked at that a little bit. Nope, not a whole lot. And let's go two more. Let's go Qcoin. Again, that's not very helpful. So if I was going to trade off of this, if I was looking at this stuff, I wouldn't even bother to really look at much of anything until it started showing me something that would be really good in terms of a reasonable drop here. And I can't tell much because there's not a lot of history. So here it seems to be consolidating. The longer it consolidates, the better. But usually before these consolidations, there's usually a little bit of a drop before it starts to take off. So this, obviously it's not going to go to negatives, so that doesn't help me here. So we're going to take a look at it from, let's see, from that last high to that last low. And if we were just to do a measured move, I would be sitting there going, well, let's say it took one more drop. I would get right around back to that level. Okay, I would potentially pick it up there because that would be the last low that it had. But generally they tend to drop a little bit more. So let's take a look at another exchange, see if we can find better data. That would be, let's look at Uniswap. Uniswap. Oh, now we're talking. Okay, now we've got something here. Okay, when you're looking at a chart and you're looking at technical analysis, you want to get, especially if it's a newer coin or newer stock, you want to get as much history as you can. This is on the 4-hour chart, so that's let's take a look at the daily. What does it look like? Okay, then there's a daily. That's nice. Now that's a little bit more data because it's already gone through one cycle, second cycle. This is a little mini cycle before it really took off. So could I have caught some of that if I only knew? Let's say I came in over, I started seeing data here. Well, one of the things to do, if you're familiar with Fibonacci's, if you're not, then I'd be happy to share with you how we tend to show our students how to do that. Here we go from the lowest that I was able to find. So 322 US point 0.00002 USDT. So that's the latest high, and it bounced all the way down into this region. I bet you this is even further, but we'll leave it at that. It bounced off of here, and then it flew up and it did what would be considered a super cycle. And a super cycle on here, it superseded this 4.23. So even if you got out here, that would have been a nice little gain from down. Let's just assume that we got in here. We happen to be one of the lucky ones. It got here. That is one. Let's see. Let's go 3. That's 10 million %. Oh wow, 10 million %. Okay, so let's see what happens if we manage to hit the very, very top of this. 23 million %. Wow. In 279 days. Now, of course, you have to have come in at the very, very bottom and gotten at the very, very tippy top, which is very unlikely that anybody really holds on to that. I know that some people do, but maybe they came in later, that kind of stuff, and some people try to buy in here, which they tend to get stuck. Okay, so let's say you had even missed that cycle and hit this one. I said, well, where might it go if it actually if it got to here? Well, the next one is after it takes a dip. If it has one more cycle that it looks like it has strength, it would be up to about the 1414, which is right there. So you're like, okay, now we're looking at something that was really, really, really good on here. And it's gone through a couple of cycles. And notice the pattern of what we saw earlier. We had this right here, and this had come down into the 236, which I'm going to flip it over here for a second. Let me make the adjustment. Settings, I'm going to reverse this so that we can see what the retracement, meaning retracement, what is a retracement? Is when it comes back. How far did it come back? It came back to the 786. It hit it once, twice, 3 times, and it said, okay, you know what? I think we're ready to go up. And once you get more familiar, you see that this is a really nice pattern right in here, which we're not going to get too deep into right now, but we are saying that that's a really nice pattern, showing that it had strength and it possibly was going to fly up, and sure enough, it did. But to what levels? That's part of what we talked about earlier. How do we see some of these higher levels? And with the extension, that gives us an idea roughly of where it might go. So that being said, what is the bigger cycle doing now? Because some people now are starting to hear about it, or have heard about it, the huge gains. This is 20 million. So let's think about that for a second. If I put, let's say, $100 into that, and we ended up with 23 million. I'm not suggesting you do that at all. I'm just doing math just for entertainment purposes. So $100, and that became a multiple of 232,000. Let's see, is that right? So I'll take, 232,000. I'm just going to say 232,000. That would have been $23 million. That is crazy if I did my math correctly. So you guys can double check if that's correct or not. But that would be crazy. That's assuming catching it all the way from down here and getting out at the tippy top, which is very unrealistic. Because once you get these kinds of gains, 10 million % gain, you're saying, hey, you know what? I think I'm good. Or at least take a good partial profit, and you would have to then ride the rest out. and be really, really good at technical analysis and anything else that would influence a coin. So that being said, now saying, well, that's great and all, but can we benefit from this? Can we gain from this particular result? Well, in cryptocurrency, there tends to be a slightly different pattern than, especially in the younger projects, to be able to hit a lower level, and that lower level usually ends up becoming right around between the 886. Oops, not what I want to alert. We want to set the settings on here. Let's see. We'll click on that. There we go. And we want to. Nope, we don't want the forecast. Just give me a moment. Let's get this thing to work. There we go. We want to be able to come back to probably the 886. So the 886, right down in here. Remember we said earlier that it's very possible that it could take another dip right before it starts to try to push up. Now this looks really nice that it's been consolidating and it wants to potentially push up. It's getting quiet in the market. It's not a whole lot of volume coming in at the moment. But if it were to take a dip, if it were to do one more dip, what might that dip be? Could it come down into this region, into the 886? Could it take a quick dip down there? It's possible because there's support here. So we got some support right here, right in this region, right there. We got a range all the way down into this region right here. So anywhere in this region could be a reasonable place for it to try to dip back down into before it starts to try to make a jump up. Now, many cryptocurrencies have still been, I'm going to call them slaves to to Bitcoin. I hate to use that word, but it seems that Bitcoin does have a level of influence. There's another support level right there. And look at that, what a coincidence. Once you start seeing multiple different jumps, different pieces of information that match up, that gives you potentially, or gives me, a higher probability that this might work out. So in this scenario right now, Leo, what if it goes up? What if it does go up? What can I gain? Because I'm eager to get in, and I hear my friends and everybody's getting in on it, and they're doing blah 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 blah. I say, okay, well, let's say you choose to go that route. Well, what might be another reasonable place to look? Well, it would be potentially around here. So that's a 99%. That's almost 100% return. Now ignore the time frame because we don't know the time frame exactly where it would be. But if I believed that this was going to go back up, this is the next region where it would potentially, in my opinion, would have a bit of difficulty trying to get up above, and that would take some time to get past it. So anywhere between here to there, somewhere in here, it's going to be very likely it's going to run into a little bit of a sideways pattern to try to get past that. So could there be some nice gains? Well, yeah, it could be. If I happen to catch that from there, that's a really nice one, right? If I happen to catch it from down here, that same one becomes 400%. That's a much better gain. And if it happened to get into those highs again, we're talking 1200%. Of course, now this is getting a little dreamy because there's other stuff that may happen in here. But as a decent time frame, that might be something to look at if I'm willing to, if I like the project and I like where it's headed. That potentially could be a good one, to be able to go there. But again, that would be fundamental analysis. It's something that you would need to do on your own, do your own research, and determine whether it's a project that's worth the attention. And people saying, you know what, I agree, and everybody's starting to put money into this. What if we were to hit another super rocket? Well, what if we were to really just take off, right? Because Bitcoin would fly and everybody would fly. What might be a target that I would be potentially looking at? Again, this is not advice. This is just looking at things and saying, what range might I be looking? I'd first be looking somewhere in this region, right between here and there, somewhere there. And obviously, if it was to hit those levels, now you're talking some crazy bigger numbers that everybody dreams about. And that would be really nice, right? So somewhere in there, even if somewhere in the middle, might be a next stop before it tries to take a little bit of a break. So this is a sort of an over more expansive look on this, depending on whether you're looking at this from a perspective of a long-term holder, or whether you're looking at it because you really like the project, you really like what it stands for, you really like what it does. Then awesome. Might be somebody that doesn't mind picking it up here and saying, you know what, if it goes down, it goes down. But if it doesn't, then I take the right up. I'm good with that. Awesome. That's your decision. Up to you. From the technical analysis side, and only from the technical analysis side, nothing else. Haven't looked at any news, haven't looked at anything else. Then obviously this is giving us some good data that we can play off of and make our own decisions. So if any of this is of interest, it sounds interesting to you, and you want to see some more of these, feel free to drop a comment onto the video below, telling us what projects are kind of interesting to you. We like doing these and we like sharing them. If you want to go even further because you want to understand even more, obviously that's a whole other conversation. So you can reach out to us. I'm going to do one last thing here to kind of see if we get some more information that would help us get a better sense of where we are. And let's see on the Ichimoku cloud, which is a very powerful process here. Okay, so Ichimoku is reinforcing some of what we said. If you don't know what it is, we'd be happy to share. But here into this region, this is a cloud. This is a huge red cloud that was I think of it this way: if it's in this area, it's going to hit turbulence, just kind of like when you're in an airplane and you go into a cloud, you're likely to hit some turbulence. So it is very possible that we hit some turbulence in here before it has to break above this rate levels before we can really start to even consider anything for new highs, or just even breaking the previous highs. So more realistically, we're talking somewhere in this regions right in here, which is still a really good game, right? If I was to consider that. Now I'm not in it. I just became familiar with it, so I'm gonna look a little bit more into the project and determine whether or not it's something that's of interest to me. But the analysis is definitely interesting to me, and say, let's see if that can end up becoming a really good game. Just because we miss these, it doesn't mean that there's not really good opportunities at times once we have done our own homework and have made a decision for ourselves that we're willing to live with, or if it goes against us, or obviously take the gains if it comes in our favor. All right, that's enough talking. I think we've shared enough. If you like this video and you want to continue to get more, then subscribe to our channel so that way you can get notified whenever the new one comes out. All right, everybody, have an awesome day, and happy analysis and happy gains.